All right, so we kind of got through step one. We touched on budget. I'm gonna drill down a little bit deeper in budget right now because I think it's important for everybody here. So Stephanie, how did you end up on the budget here? I don't want you to go through the entire process, but give me an idea. Did you stay within budget? Did you exceed the budget? Yeah. I know the answer.
Just tell us that.
Well, as a designer, I probably exceeded the budget, but I always say to my clients, like, I'm going to show you the best of the best to let you know what could be there. Now, granted, I'm not going to show them something that there's no way they could ever afford, but I can always take a design that's up here and redesign it to get it back down here, just by tweaking it a little bit. So I don't know how many numbers Greg has ran on this yet because we're still working through selections, but I'm sure there's going to be areas where we have to back down a little bit. But I can easily help the client understand that it's still going to look as good. It's just a matter of maybe changing, a $15 light fixture to the same light fixture, but to an $8 light fixture where we're cutting it in half, but it's still a similar look.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the important question was not what my budget was, but what his budget was. And that took a while to really get to because it was a pretty wide range. This owner has the wherewithal to build whatever the heck he wants. He's got plenty of money. It's just what does he want to build in that neighborhood, in that space, and kind of ring it in. And like Sean said, he's a local builder in the area, production builder, but has a good sense of what overbuilding is. And so we really had to dial him in on, okay, well, where do you want to land on this project? We actually ended up pretty close. We were probably a little over, I think, the first time we ran it, and then work with Stephanie to kind of pull some things back or just simple allowances. I mean, at this point, we don't really know what the cabinetry is going to cost, but if you have a $600,000 budget for cabinetry, you can easily just wind that back down to $500 and just start, drilling stuff or, easily pulling stuff back like that. Because we really don't even have a selection at that point.
Right.
So,
yep.
We're kind of still in that phase, and we've hit his comfort level. And then he may just decide to say, heck with it, let's just keep going. And that wouldn't surprise me.
No, I've had not only this client, but a lot of clients do that where they're like, well, no, that's really important to me. And a lot of times it does come down to things like cabinetry. It's a big number. But they'll say, you know what, I don't want to back it down. Let's just go ahead and spend the extra money.
Right.
So ultimately, it's up to the client what the budget is.
So right now we're at a baseline, right, where I think we have ample, money in each of the activities, and then it's just going to be down to, some of those final decisions and where he wants to go on that.
Kevin, how do you
wants what he wants.
How do you start the budget process with your client?
I touched on it earlier. I think it starts with education, right? They've got to understand what lights look like, what that is, right? And then you can start to quantify what that impacts and start to add it up. And the client will tell you where the threshold is. I've found, right? Oftentimes you won't get to the end. You'll get objections along the way if you're starting to quantify it. And so they'll look at it and go, yeah, I love that linear look in the hallway. And that might add $20,000 to the hallway. But that's okay to me because I think that looks cool enough and I'm willing to spend that money on it. Similarly, in our world, we have that same conversation. We talk about, do we want traditional round square speakers that go on a ceiling, or do we want those to go away? Do we want the hidden speakers? Or do we want something that's more of a high performance and a smaller, more discreet kind of enclosure where people don't see things? And so there's layers that you go through. And I think that starts with, you mentioned earlier, discovery questions, having a conversation with the client, finding out how they intend to use the home, how they're going to live in it. Are they traveling? Is security important to them? Touching on the different subjects of what they have and starting to dig into each of those and to quantify that along the way. And then recapping that, right? When we're done, it's saying, okay, we've talked about these things. Let's look at what that impact looks like and make sure that we're on the right track so that we don't go do all this work and then come back and completely miss the mark on where we are. I think it's important to be able to kind of, just from a sales perspective, I think we all hit that from a sales perspective, is being able to, discuss what needs are, quantify values, do the design, bring it back in line with what that comes in as.
And I've also found a lot of times a client won't give you a budget.
Yeah.
Right.
And a lot of it, I think, is they think, if I tell you I want to spend $1 million, you're going to spend $1 million and then some. I'm using it as a guideline. I'm not using it to upsell you product.
Right.
So there's a lot of times where you're working without a budget, and then you put that number out there, and they go, whoa, that's way too much. Let's back it down. So I always, say to every one of my clients and my assistants, this whatever, that everyone has a budget. Like, I don't care how much money you have a number in your head. And how do I figure out what that number is if you're not going to give it to me?
Right.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll just throw numbers out.
Right. Yeah.
Just randomly throw a number. If I came back with you and this is $500,000, how would you feel about that?
Right.
And then I just wait, let them like freak out or go, oh, okay, yeah, they'll say something.
Think about it.
Yeah. Maybe we don't want to go quite that far, but let's do something in this range, right? And it can kind of help get that ball rolling off of it. So I think like your historical data.
Yeah.
The fact that you have that, I think, helps you be able to get that to them to say,
right,
where are we?
Yeah, I mean, it all comes back, for me, in the importance of the collaboration and everything that we're doing, because it's not just, we have more design professionals on this job than, probably ever had, and it's not just us at this table. There's other people involved with this. But ultimately, in a project like this, with a client like this, you just want no regrets, right? Mm-hmm. So he's going to oscillate back and forth between what he saw in London, come back and talk to you about it, talk about it in budget, and then ultimately make the decision between A and B on which direction he wants to go. And so we just all have to be on the same page and continuously communicating as those changes, come around, so we don't miss the mark somewhere. But for me, again, it's just that at the end of the day, the matched vision and expectation that the owner had of the house and what we ultimately deliver, and using him and his family along in the process to make sure that every decision is the final decision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
that's awesome. So it's interesting because when I started my design business, I identified this as probably the biggest obstacle early in the process. And I tried to find a solution to overcome it. And what I realized is that if I was building a $7 to $10, $15 million custom home and I wanted to know what technology would cost in that house, and I Googled it or I asked Alexa, I probably wouldn't get an answer. If I did get an answer, it wouldn't be an accurate answer. And I really didn't have a solid understanding of what it should cost. And as a consumer who didn't spend 30 years in the business, I'd be a little nervous that I was going to go find Kevin, and Kevin was going to tell me it's going to be $750,000 or $1.8 million worth of technology, and I don't know what I'm getting for that number. So I wanted to build a way or understand a way to take all this historical data, all this knowledge that you and I have had after 20 plus years in the business, and come up with a number really quickly. So I built a tool for myself that now I share with builders and architects and designers, just kind of get a ballpark at the table. So while we're doing that education, while we're running through all the options and all the various things we can do, I've got a 7-question survey that gets us to a good, better, and best technology budget for everything, for lighting, for shading, for audio video, for power solutions, for HVAC controls, for golf simulators, for all the pieces and bits and things that we install in these homes. So at the table with the client, I can say, well, based on what you're asking for, regardless of who the integrator is going to be, this is what you'd expect to spend for these things. So we sort of put a price tag on what these various things could cost and a range, and it's very telling at that moment. They look at those numbers, and there's always a little bit of sticker shock, but they also look at it and say, well, there's a range, right? So I understand that if I don't want to spend as much, I can get these products and services. If I want to spend more, I can get these products and services. And it's been a really useful tool to do that.
I mean, at this point, as when we're sitting down and going through this discussion, and I remember this meeting very vividly, we had no idea what his budget was. We just knew what he wanted. We had not talked to a single integrator in Central Florida at this point. He hadn't walked into anybody's dealership or anything like that. He was completely brand agnostic at this point, had no idea what platform he was using. We were just basically presenting, or Sean was presenting to him, what his range is in technology. And I thought that was pretty rewarding in a way, because we weren't really scared of this. When you could tell he kind of swallowed a little bit when you went above $1 million. But then he was like, well, okay, if that's what it's going to take, then that's what it's going to take. So I just really like this approach because it put him in that frame of mind of what technology is going to cost before somebody was trying to sell him something at a dealership, right? So that was rewarding for me.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you.